I have Steve Krafft up here, political expert here at Fox 10. Steve, we have a very politically knowledgeable audience here on News Now right now because they've been staying with us since the Donald Trump rally in Nevada that we aired at noon. So I know a lot of them are probably eager to hear from you, hear your take on last night's GOP debate.
Okay.
And I can play clips.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a first.
Well, my take on it was, let's start with the front runners. For Carson and Trump, my feeling was the folks who liked them saw no reason to dislike them based on last night.
Right.
So Carson was mellow, he was inoffensive, he was vague, he was soothing, he was policy-free pretty much, specifics-free, but very agreeable, kind of an antidote to all of the fighting and...
Nice.
Yes, he was nice.
Mm-hmm.
So folks who want that and kind of know where he stands, politically and culturally,
right,
are going to feel reassured. They're going to like him just as well. Folks who like Trump's bombastic, in-your-face style, take no prisoners, make America winner again, people who oppose me are losers and clowns. The whole shtick, which is, I think, enormously appealing and entertaining for a lot of folks
right,
in this current climate, they're going to continue to be Trump fans. He was his... the normal Trump presentation, he was out there and he was funny and he was entertaining.
Oh yeah, when he would just call out people. I love the part where he was arguing with the moderator when the moderator was like, no, it was always going to be 2 hours. Like, no, it wasn't. Don't act like that. It was so good.
But for somebody who really, it's an economics debate, so somebody really wanted to talk about the finer points of what the Fed should be doing and where interest rates should be and the Export-Import Bank and what the minimum wage ought to be in the country, and trade deals hardly came up at all, and that's his big area, right? Trade deals. Mm-hmm. What we should do with the Chinese? Should we institute tariffs to take them on? Specifically, what would you do? Do you favor this new treaty that for the Pacific Rim countries on economic? I mean, I thought it was an economics debate ostensibly, but there was very little of that because that stuff's boring. And CNBC was all about goosing the ratings and entertaining people.
Right.
And it wasn't really into asking about economics, even though that's what the network does over there. So there wasn't much of that. But if you like Trump, you're going to like his performance last night, I thought. In terms of the rest of the candidates, the others who jumped out as having effective performances were Marco Rubio, who is glib, who's very adept at taking a question and twisting it into a completely different answer. He's very rapid fire in his responses, and he's very smooth. He's very practiced. He's young. He's a handsome young family man type guy. He's Latino. Mm-hmm. And so this is like catnip to Republicans. They desperately need a guy like this. So that's why they're wishing and hoping that he catches some steam and really gets to move. So he did well, and I think Ted Cruz did well. If you have the spirit of Trump, but you want someone who's actually inside the government right now, understands how the wheels of power work and the levers of power. Cruz, as obnoxious as he is and as humorless as he is a hero to a lot of far-right conservatives. Really like him culturally, and they like his willingness to shut down the U.S. government over Planned Parenthood, or over the debt ceiling, or whatever he wants to shut down the government for. They like that. They want a guy who's going to throw a gear into the machinery.
I have the clip of him calling out the media. Do you want to watch that clip?
Yeah, and that was kind of, frankly, I thought he was just taking a page out of the Newt Gingrich playbook 4 years ago. Gingrich did that famously, got a lot of traction. So when Cruz did it, and he did a nice job with it, it was kind of tired because it's been done before. It's a regular time.
But I will say that the questions that CNBC asked were a little absurd, considering that they are a business network and the focus of the debate was supposed to be the economy.
I totally agree. And so you can't blame these candidates for feeling a little peevish about this after a while. And
if they were preparing for the debate, for example, I'm assuming that they were preparing for economic-related questions. So
now, before we hear about some of these quotes, we should mention that the guy who really needed a strong performance was Jeb Bush, and he did not get it. He did not get a strong performance. He wasn't bad, but he seemed to me to be kind of like a distracted college professor who was just didn't feel like mixing it up. And the thing about this election, or any election, is part of it is policies and politics and positions, but an awful lot of it is just like voting for someone to be the prom king. I mean, really, that's what
Who's
it's
popular?
Yeah, this is just flat out popularity contest, and you could tell watching this that Jeb Bush just wasn't one of the cool kids, and Marco Rubio probably was one of the cool kids in high school, and Trump was kind of in the whatever military reform school that he was sent to for misbehavior. He was probably a formidable guy, and you can kind of see. I was watching this, trying to imagine these guys as high school kids,
Right.
and you just got the feeling watching this that Jeb Bush was just kind of on the fringes a little bit.
I want you to answer Rachel's question. Crafty, is Trump staying quiet, not interrupting? Was it an attack? I think she's trying to ask. Trump choosing to stay quiet and not interrupting, was that a tactic, or do you think it's a new Trump?
I think it's a tactic. I think that he is at the point now where he has to grow his base. Not everybody just likes the bombastic Donald. Some people want a guy who actually has some, has something to say of consequence and has some actual content to share with the country. Mm-hmm. So I think he has to pull his punches a little bit now, or feels like that. There's only so far that your shouting can take you. After a while, you have to calmly tell people what you're going to do. And for voters who aren't in your fan club, you have to allow them to imagine what it would be like to having you sit behind the desk in the Oval Office as the President of the United States. Can you see Donald Trump sitting there making decisions that affect the very survival of our country? If you feel that way and you want him to be president and you want more people to vote for him, expand the base, I think that the Trump people who helped shape his campaign told him at some point, dude, you're going to have to be a little presidential. So I think that he took pains to do that. And also, he's been taking on Carson.
Right.
But Carson said very early on in this debate that he wasn't going to attack any of his fellow Republicans. And Trump very adroitly picked up on that. And that meant not calling out Carson, not calling him Gentle Ben, not insulting him, not calling him low energy. And so the rules were set early by Ben Carson that you got to play nice on this stage. And so Trump took that to mean, okay, I better kind of chill here.
Right.
And he did. But if you look at who had the time of possession, who talked the most.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to ask you that.
He still came in third.
Ben Carson. No, Trump.
Yeah, Carson was like near the bottom.
I know. I was just thinking
There was
that.
plenty of Donald Trump.
I was talking about that this morning, how I don't remember hearing as much from Trump as I did in the first two debates. Who had the most time?
Carly Fiorina.
That makes sense.
Total loudmouth.
Well, she kept interrupting and she kept
She
talking
interrupts
over
everybody,
the
and
moderators.
And I was waiting for a moderator, and nobody seems to have the nerve to do it, to cut her off. They're giving her an extra 30 seconds, and she's so insistent on delivering her sound bites. If they had any nerve, they would just start saying, okay, time's up. We're going to keep talking here until you stop talking, and we're going to listen to the next contestant here. Because they never seem to quite they're not quite able to seal the deal on shutting her down when she goes way over her time limits.
Here she is talking about big government. We can go ahead and listen.
She's a very good debater, and she's very practiced, but I don't think she projected a lot of warmth on this stage. And I think she sounded exactly like she sounded the last time around. I think that she's got some fans out there, but I don't take her seriously as someone who's actually a threat to win this nomination.
You see, folks, this is how socialism starts. Government causes a problem, and then government steps in to solve the problem. This is why, fundamentally, we have to take our government back. The student loan problem has been created by government. Government trying to level the playing field between internet and brick and mortar creates a problem. The FCC jumping in now and saying we're going to put 400 pages of regulation over the internet is going to create massive problems. But guess who pushed for that regulation? The big internet companies. This is what's going on. Big and powerful use big and powerful government to their advantage.
This is from someone who was the CEO of big and powerful Hewlett Packard. So, I don't know if she scored many points with that. And the whole Hewlett Packard stewardship and how that affects her candidacy just hangs over her bid for the White House like a dark cloud wherever she goes. And I think she did a great job last night of trying to explain away the dismal fortunes of that company under her watch.
Right.
How they lost half their stock value in the 5 years she was the boss. By saying that it was a turbulent time and that one of the people who criticized her the most now thinks she did a good job. But, 30,000 people got canned and the stock took a beating, and there's not a lot of warm and fuzzy memories about her time as the CEO.
Right.
So that's a fundamental challenge for her candidacy. But on the plus side, she does a really good job of attacking Hillary Clinton. And I think she's going to be a major factor in this campaign, maybe as a vice presidential nominee, maybe as a high cabinet post, should a Republican win.
Let's see, what are the people saying? Joe Foley saying epic fail by Fiorina at the closing statement. Tess saying, I like Fiorina interrupting and insisting on finishing her statements. Seth saying, I saw a meme that said if Fiorina wants to bankrupt Planned Parenthood, she should try for CEO. That's pretty good.
Oh, brother.
Seth thinks that Kasich will be someone's VP. Let's talk about Kasich for a second.
Kasich tried very hard. He came across as like a crabby old uncle in this debate. And he's clearly frustrated that he's a guy of high achievement. You know, in Bush 1 White House, he was a budget chief. I think that's who he worked with. Long career, very long career, and distinguished career in the House of Representatives. He's the governor of Ohio. The state's running a surplus. You know, he's liked by Democrats in Ohio and Republicans. He won re-election with, I think, 60+% of the vote. Why isn't he being taken more seriously? I don't know. He comes across as crabby, cranky. Early on, when they asked him to talk about, you know, what is a character flaw you find in yourself? That was the first question.
Oh, right. Everyone was talking about their flaws.
But his flaw was that Donald Trump and Ben Carson are ill-suited to be president, and it's time to be serious in this campaign.
But let's be real. How many people actually acknowledged real flaws?
Nobody did.
No one did.
But he was the first guy to talk last night. He immediately attacked Trump, immediately attacked Carson, said that the party needs someone who really knows how to be president to run for president. And that's kind of what he tried all night. I mean, he tried as hard as he could. But sometimes, though, he's so frustrated by where he is in this race and where most of the voters seem to be in this race, at this point at least, that he kind of went over the line and seemed sort of cranky, I thought, by the end. But, you know, he's a person to take seriously as a vice presidential candidate because let's say a guy like Trump gets a nomination, which I still think is a long shot. But if he were to get the nomination, he would need someone who's an inside player who really understood the process, like holy crap, I've just won the White House. What am I going to do? He would need someone who could say, okay, well, here's the first 10 things you need to do.
Right.
Kasich is a guy who could do that.
I have a clip from Kasich here. This is where he's talking about balancing the budget, because that was the one thing he was really emphasizing,
right.
The fact that he's fixed Ohio. Let's go ahead and listen.
I'm the only person on this stage that actually was involved in the chief architect of balancing the federal budget. You can't do it with empty promises. You know, these plans would put us trillions and trillions of dollars in debt. I actually have a plan. I'm the only one on this stage that has a plan that would create jobs, cut taxes, balance the budget, and can get it done because I'm realistic. You just don't make promises like this. Why don't we just give a chicken in every pot while we're coming up with these fantasy tax schemes? We'll just clean it up. Where are you going to clean it up? You have to deal with entitlements. You have to be in a position to control discretionary spending. You got to be creative and imaginative. Now, let me just be clear, John. I went into Ohio where we had an $8 billion hole, and now we have a $2 billion surplus. We're up 347,000 jobs. When I was in Washington, I fought to get the budget balanced. I was the architect. It was the first time we did it since man walked on the moon. We cut taxes, and we had a $5 trillion projected surplus when I left. That's hard work. Governor, fiscal discipline, know what you're doing, creativity. This stuff is fantasy, just like getting rid of Medicare and Medicaid.
You said yesterday.
Come on, that's just not, you don't scare senior citizens with that. It's not.
Any thoughts?
Well, you know, Trump's whole response to the appeal by Kasich was, dude, you're standing away at the edge of the stage because clearly you're a loser and you have small poll numbers, and that's why you're way down there at the end, because the people who are leading the pack are in the middle, and that's where I am, and you're way down there.
Billy D. Cruzen, by the way, objecting to what I said, saying Kasich did not fix Ohio. Major cities are more violent now than ever before. He encouraged this catch and release with violent criminals. I meant just like from a money perspective.
Well, we're in a money debate.
Yeah.
And you can always take issue with crime stats in any given city, any given time. Nationally, crime is probably lower than it was 30 years ago.
We just hear about it more because of the internet and social
because
media.
Of people like us.
We're just like, oh my God, this person was shot today, and there's this shooting, and that shooting, and this stabbing. And
all that's anecdotal stuff. It's not crunching numbers as a whole. So, Trump also said, besides with your economy in Ohio, you just got lucky with fracking. so they found a lot of oil. So you guys got a windfall there. So, and not only that, you made money working at Lehman Brothers, a notorious bank that went bust, helping to set off the Great Recession of 2008. So you were a crummy banker, you were part of the problem, and you got lucky leading your state, and you're way at the end of the stage. So after that, Kasich had some of the wind taken out of his sails, I felt, watching the debate.
I actually have that clip, by the way, of Trump commending Carson, the one that you had mentioned earlier. I just noticed that I have it here in our file.
Yeah.
We have so many different quotes. Are any of these standing out to you? Actually, you know what? The one that I talked about this morning but haven't talked about since? Fantasy football.
That was weak.
Really? That was my favorite part. When
it
Chris
just served,
Christie called CNBC out on asking about fantasy football,
I
thought it was good.
I felt everyone was wasting my time at that point. I felt it was a dumb question. I thought the answer was kind of predictable. And Chris Christie, for me, is just hard to watch.
Right, but the question wasn't even asked to Chris Christie. It was
No.
asked to Jeb Bush. He just decided to jump in and be like,
Yeah.
what?
He literally Bigfooted Jeb Bush.
Well, let's hear it again. There's Jeb Bush.
Right.
So here's,
Carl, are we
let me say
really
this.
talking about getting
we have a government
involved in fantasy football? We have, wait a second, we have $19 trillion in debt. We have people out of work. We have ISIS and Al-Qaeda attacking us. And we're talking about fantasy football? Can we stop? Stop. So seriously.
Total grandstanding.
How about this? How about we get the government to do what they're supposed to be doing? Secure our borders, protect our people, and support American values and American families.
This is
Enough on
it's
fantasy
like kicking an
football. Let
extra
people
point for
play.
him.
Who cares?
I know, but it was still good. It was
It was
still
good. It was all
entertaining.
right.
I thought it was entertaining.
I wanted a
Because
serious
the thing is,
discussion.
when
Let me
Bush
get
was
it.
asked it, he was
So
so
here's-
caught
are
off
we
guard.
saying
It was
this?
so
Talking about
awkward.
we have
I
a
know,
government
and it's kind
involved.
of, he just looks like a professor who's just kind of like not really into politics anymore.
By the way, I see that Hillary Clinton is in New Hampshire. We can go ahead
Oh.
and listen for a minute, and then we can come back to our discussion. What do you think? Or do you
Okay.
have to go?
Whatever works for you.
Well, I'm just doing what I'm told, Steve. So let's go ahead and dip into Hillary Clinton, who is speaking now. And she's been in New Hampshire since yesterday. We've dipped into all of her New Hampshire events.
Okay, let's take
Wondering
a listen.
what she's talking about now.
Institutions can refinance huge debts, but we tell students and their families, no, you're stuck with it. That is wrong. It's wrong morally, it's wrong economically. So what I have proposed is that everybody gets to refinance their debt, and they get the lowest possible interest rate, which will save many, many young people thousands of dollars. And we put an end date. If you keep up with your payments, there will be an end date where you don't have to keep paying for, the rest of your productive life. And if you go into public service, I don't know what your daughter does, but if you go into teaching, for example, you would get a discount even off the refinance debt. And if you do national service, you would pay even less. And then we're going to have to do much more to make college affordable in the first place. Because right now, the cost of tuition in the last 10 years has gone up more than 40%. It's the fastest growing cost that families face. And many parents and grandparents, they're willing to, get the loan, they're willing to sign, but they shouldn't have to be paying these really outrageous rates. And what I want to do is make it possible for everybody to attend community college free and to attend a public college or university without having to borrow for tuition. And the way we will do that is focusing on middle class, working families, and young, poor kids who deserve a chance, is that if your family can contribute something, they will. If they can't, they won't. The student will be asked to work 10 hours. Now, some people disagree with me about this, but I had to work going through school, and I think it's good for a young person to work for his or her education. And we're going to get colleges to lower their costs. Because why has tuition gone up so much? I want people to be able to use their Pell Grants to pay for their living expenses. And I want more.
All right, now I have
programs to
Steve
help
Krafft up here
young
again. I
parents
figured
who
since we have Hillary Clinton live coming in from New Hampshire, that now's the time to get Steve Kraft's take on Hillary Clinton and her future.
Well, she has the luxury of being able to do all these little micro events and really work on the trail and really build out her campaign, computer staff and infrastructure and,
Right.
Granular detail, sifting through the voting rolls to figure out who they can appeal to, social media outreach. This is where Democrats are really good, and this is where Republicans are not really good. And they're really working to exploit that. She now has a relative luxury where she feels she had a strong debate, unless the other shoe drops on the email stuff. She's kind of past the Benghazi stuff.
Yeah.
She's kind of on cruise control right now.
Well, I mean, I think her biggest worry or concern up until a couple of weeks ago was whether Joe Biden was going to run and throw her off her course. And now
That's
that
right.
he's not in the
He's
game.
not running, and
I
she's
mean,
skated past the Benghazi committee. Now the
Yeah.
big threat for her is going to be, and I don't know what the answer is, whatever the FBI finds or doesn't find.
Because
about
Bernie
her
Sanders
email
isn't a
stream.
big enough threat to her, is he?
He's not.
Yeah.
Bernie Sanders has passionate supporters, but not the numbers that she can pull out. There's a lot of communities where people don't know even who Bernie Sanders is,
Right.
and they don't connect to them at all. A lot of traditional Democratic constituencies who reliably vote Democratic simply don't. He's not on the radar screen.
Right, and it's hard if you are a traditional Democrat to stray from the Clinton name.
At this point, she's been around since the
92.
92. So early 90s, people started hearing about her. So that's a long time.
Right, her name has been around for 23 years.
She has almost universal
almost my
recognition. The only other person, who has that kind of name recognition is Trump.
It would be entertaining if it was Hillary versus
It'd be great.
Trump.
Because they know each other. They probably, in an
She
earlier
went
lifetime,
to
were
his
friends.
wedding.
Went to his wedding. Their kids are friends.
I know.
Chelsea is a friend of
Ivanka,
I think her name
I
is.
want Trump now to get the Republican nomination just for our
It'd
analysis.
be a total tabloid,
It would be so good.
like cover of People magazine every time you turned around.
That's true because it was making headlines when Chelsea and Ivanka talked about their friendship and how they don't let politics get in the way.
Yeah, well, that's true. And I think that probably there's, much as Trump protests that he hates Hillary's guts, I don't think he does.
Well, it's all part of the game,
It's a total game.
right?
It's a total
like if
game.
you're on that stage.
The most awesome quote last night
What's that?
came from Ted Cruz, where he was saying, I may not be the kind of guy, his opening statement, I may not be the kind of guy you might want to drink a beer with, but I am the kind of guy who would be a good designated driver. I might not be a lot of fun to hang out with, but I can get you home safely. What a stiff.
It was pretty good. What did you think about Carly Fiorina's closing statement in terms of being Hillary Clinton? I might not be your dream candidate, but I'm Hillary Clinton's worst nightmare.
It's not true.
Yeah,
I don't think.
I don't know.
I
Look
think-
at
I think
Hillary. She's so happy right
Hillary's
now.
like a battleship. She could just flick her wrist and knock Carly on or behind.
Right.
I think that it was an easy applause line. It was kind of catchy. I thought she did a nice job delivering it, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she can be an effective campaigner for the Republicans, and I respect her intelligence for sure. But she needs to just sort of, she's so tightly wound.
Mm-hmm.
I was just thinking, what if I'd worked at HP while she was the big boss? That would have been a drag. Oh, my God.
I know. Has any news networks reached out to former
Yes.
HP employees? What
Yes.
have they been saying?
I've seen a lot. And to be fair, because that's how we roll, some people really, really didn't like her and thought that she messed up the company big time, and that she was very cold and fired people without batting an eye, tens of thousands of people. But then there were other individuals who said, she came to my wedding, or when my spouse was sick, she sent a get well card, and she was really nice to us. So I think there are two sides to her, like every person.
Right.
She's capable of warmth, but in these settings,
Smiling, as she pointed out
right,
yesterday.
that's a problem for her, smiling. But I think that she's also capable of being, a human being, and then capable of being very kind of almost robotic. And there's two sides, and I think she's acknowledged that. She doesn't have the natural empathy that a guy like Bill Clinton can muster. George W. Bush had that folksy quality. He was the kind of guy you would want to drink a beer with.
Right.
But she's not the kind of person that I would want to drink anything with. I mean, maybe though, it's funny though, sometimes you meet people who seem super tightly wound, and then you actually talk to them and they're pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Like Marcia Clark was here yesterday. I interviewed her. And I thought, wow, she's going to be a real piece of work. But you know what? She was really nice.
You've interviewed a lot of people.
I have interviewed a lot of people.
Ben Carson, you say, is very nice.
He's a very nice guy. I like Ben Carson.
By the way, I do want to acknowledge some of the chat room because I feel like
Let's do
a lot
it.
of you guys reacting
Let's
when we
get it
said
on.
Trump versus Clinton. Trump versus Clinton, let's go.
And let's ask
Clinton
about a
says.
Rubio versus Clinton, because that's probably what we're going to be looking
You
at.
think so?
I do.
So that's saying Trump versus Clinton would be so amazing on an entertainment level, and that's the view I'm thinking too. I would
Yeah,
be entertained at least.
that's our dream. It's like the Cubs winning the World Series. It's a dream. So, what do people think about Rubio versus Clinton?
What do people think of Rubio versus Clinton? I know we're going to have to wrap up in just a couple minutes. Getting some messages from the bosses. Apparently, there's a storm coming in.
Ooh,
Yeah, storm coming in. So we'll be going to that in just a couple minutes.
really?
Yeah. Storm chasing. Better
Bring my galoshes.
wear plastic bags on my shoes. Got to keep them safe.
That's right. Your Bruno Mollies.
No, they're Michael Kors.
Oh, really? Those are pretty good. You know, they match your dress so brilliantly.
That's why I wore 'em. But let's go ahead and
Right. But anyway,
wrap up our GOP coverage, our recap with some final thoughts.
well,
Winners, losers. and
Winners
is Jeb
were-
gonna come? Is Jeb gonna bail?
winner of the debate was probably Rubio in terms of enhancing his presidential prospects. Cruz came out very positively as well. I think Trump and Carson did good jobs and kind of stayed where they were. I think Christie helped himself a little bit. Rand Paul, in that photo there, did not help himself. And aside from ego, there's no reason for him to be in this race at this point.
He talked about filibustering
Same with
today.
Huckabee, same with Kasich, same with Fiorina. So that leaves basically, I read somewhere that there's probably 6 candidates who really ought to be on the stage.
Trump,
Trump?
Fiorina.
Well, Trump,
Carson. Rubio.
Cruz, Rubio. Trump, Carson, Cruz, Rubio. And then maybe you could make the case for Fiorina and then pick your, one other one.
Christie or Bush. Probably
could be
Christie at least has
Christie or Kasich
some more
maybe.
passion. Oh,
Yeah.
that's true.
But what they ought to do is probably take 3 or 4 of these people out of the mix. And eventually, I don't know, it'll be fascinating. The next one is only like in about a week and a half.
Right,
And that could be
November
a big, big turning point. Either Rubio will consolidate his position there, or maybe he won't, and Trump or Carson will reassert themselves. Who knows?
Who knows?
It's a horse
But
race.
like you said, it's just a few days away, November 10th. It's going to be on Fox Business Network, and I'm sure I'll be chatting with you about it.
And I would
then
love
as
to be
well.
in the Jeb Bush brain trust today and watch these people tearing their hair
Oh
out.
my
Because he's manfully gotten back on the campaign trail, but you could just feel the energy draining out of that campaign, like poking a balloon and watching the helium come out. It was sad to watch it, really.
Yeah, he didn't help himself last
No,
night. In
wow.
fact, he hurt himself, I think.
And it's a game. This whole debate stuff is a game, really. It doesn't have a heck of a lot to do with actually being the president day in and day out.
Right.
But like I said, it's a popularity contest, and he's not the kind of guy who's going to be elected prom king. And maybe that's what the GOP is looking for. Somebody
Someone
who could
different.
wear that crown.
All right.
Take on Hillary.
Steve, well, thanks for hanging out. Now you have
It
a
was
story
fun.
to work on.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks for giving us that analysis. That'll wrap
Bet.
up our GOP debate recap. We're going to move on and